So we'll start with this cute cowl. It is being published on Tuesday. It has been quite a journey to get there. My computer had an aneurysm on like the 4th, and it took us, I say us, it took Mitch 10 days to get it back to where it was supposed to go. So I had this pattern I was working on, and I have a laptop and I have everything on Dropbox, so I can continue to work on things. But I was working on a particularly difficult part of my spreadsheet, and I kept getting interrupted. So I had a hard time concentrating, and I really enjoyed the last few days where I've been back to normal. Everything's functioning almost normally, and through perseverance, I was able to find, after, a million tests, find the error that I was making in Excel. And the pattern tailor operates on PHP, and so you create the framework in Excel and you use Excel formulas, and then in one place you use JSON, which is, I guess, a computer language, and I don't know much about it. So I've just been copying and pasting stuff together, and then, changing words and things. And as always happens in a process like that, an ounce got switched with a gram, and, computers are dead stupid. So they just, if you don't give it to them in the right way, they can't do anything. So it took me 110 tries, I think, to finally get it right, but it's now all operable, and I just have one thing left to figure out in my spreadsheet, and it's something I do all the time, but I need to make it so that the spreadsheet is figuring something out that I don't, that I usually just intuit. And this is a big problem with me and what I do, because I know how to do all these things, but I'm not math oriented or whatever. So I have to figure out how to make what I know to Excel. And I have to give it, if this happens, then do that. If this happens, then do this other thing. And if that happens, do this. So it's quite complicated, and trust me, I'm getting to my point here. I am not logical, so that is the hardest thing for me, is lining everything up so that it makes sense to something that is just not intuiting anything. I intuit everything, it intuits nothing. And when doing work like that, or when designing, or trying to write a knitting pattern, whatever, concentration is really important. And so, like I mentioned, I got interrupted a lot during the computer purgatory. I want to get rid of that. Okay. And Chrissy, I've looked at your profile. You're a gardener. I am totally not a gardener. My husband gardens some. I love flowers, but not interested in getting my hands dirty. Interruptions are like my enemy, and I've groused for years about social media. And when Meta decided to get rid of fact checking, that was just like the last straw for me. I feel very strongly about human rights and that everyone deserves to be placed. And so I just decided that I would quit using Facebook at the end of February. And so I kind of spent February telling people I was moving everything to Substack, and that I would continue to sometimes post to Facebook and Instagram, but that I wasn't going to go there anymore. And what I have found is that it's just been a boon to my productivity, because I'm not getting interrupted. I'm not, if I get bored, or I'm having troubles figuring something out, what's the first thing we do anymore? We reach for our phone, or we go to our favorite social media platform to entertain ourselves. And although I did love cat videos, and I'm very sad to have had to give those up, I have been able to get a ton done. So what I realized was that I could, if I'm bored, I don't have to keep staring at the computer. I can get up and do something else. And sadly, this leads me to spend a lot of time looking at my yarn. And so I'm always looking well, what could I do with that? And then we're off on a Jill tangent. So I really want to encourage people to take a step back. I admit that, like most of the stuff I get from Substack, I don't have time to read. I'm not interested enough. I'm sure people are saying like super interesting things that I would love to know, but I do this thing and it's called Jill Wolcott Knits, and I have to stay focused on that. So, things that I have gotten done since I've been off social media. So, I think it was in February I worked on this pin, and you can tell it's from the yarn that I made this cowl out of. But as often happens, I'm going to take it off now. I got really excited when I realized that I could wear it with this cowl, although the cowl kind of doesn't need anything else. And this goes with something else. But let's see if I can. It's getting blurry. It was the back. I couldn't decide whether to make this so it would button into the piece it's supposed to go with, which has open stitches, or if I should put a pin on it. So now I'm happy that I put a pin on it because I can wear it with something else. And I am wearing just like the most boring colored sweater. So then I'm going to let my dress form model this, although she's wearing something that completely doesn't go with it. So I finished this other button, same thing. It just needed a pin on the back. And I found these lovely pins in my collection of fun things that are pretty long. So this one in particular has this heavy bead on it, so it really needs something that'll hold it up. And although, again, I could have buttoned it into the shawl that I made it to go with. It takes me a while sometimes to like sort out all the elements of these. There's beads, there's yarn, there's buttons, same with this one. And yeah, so they often take weeks or months to complete. And I finished the end decorations on a scarf. There isn't a pattern yet. There may never be. But so I used this kind of dusty rose yarn that I had in this fabulous. This is called Frank Ochre, this green. And then I knitted these in, so I was committed to them. They're just little spirals, but I didn't like the spirals. They felt too messy to me. My hummingbird is visiting me. So I just coiled them up and did my favorite little stitches. And then this one ended up with a little gathering of these. I think maybe they're like corals or something. And so this end, I guess there isn't a bead on this end, and I put a couple beads on this end, but I just have baubles on it. I have a great recipe for doing baubles. So this one, I accidentally knitted in the coral spiral on the wrong side. The wrong end. I'm not a very attentive knitter. And so it ended up, I thought, really cute to have that in the center. And I wore this to the movies, the film festival. And hey, Lucinda. And I'm in love with it. So I had 50 grams of the Frank Ochre, and literally this is what I have left. I probably have 18 inches. Still have a bit. So it was a 50-gram skein, and I'm so used to working with 100 grams that I did kind of get down to the bitter end on it. But I'm totally psyched about this. I now have like 3 versions of that. And then I've been knitting. So these are sleeve caps. Cap sleeves, I guess, would be more appropriate for a vest that I've been knitting. And I want to join them to the body in flat 3-needle bind off. So I worked from the outside in, and then I will pick up stitches around the armhole and add those on. I need to count rows because it's either the problem I have with socks is that like I have to make 3 to get the right size. This one's considerably smaller. I actually like it better. And this one feels kind of loose, so I think I might just take it out and re-knit it. But first, always count your rows to make sure that wasn't the problem. And yarn tangled. I've been using the stitch pattern from this, which is called Berkshire's Berkshires. I got interested in doing something else, and as she reaches for her mini. Oh, thanks. This is just my favorite cowl, Lucinda. She says, "Hi, Jill. I'm in love with what you were wearing." And I was going to wear another one of my favorite cowls today, and I spotted this in the clothing club cupboard. So also Berkshire's, but it's worked with another stitch over here in lace weight yarn, and it's linen and silk, and then the plain gray one I think is part superwash, and then I'm not sure, maybe rayon. And so this is what the other stitch pattern looks like, and I'm thinking about making top out of this, and I didn't block it properly. So it would, anyhow, I have to do that to get through. When I have to do a lot of knitting, I have to have little distractions. So then I'm laying on the floor doing Pilates. Everything happens in my studio. And I always see this yarn and ordered it kind of sight unseen. And I got to tell you, it's just so garish. I can hardly stand it, but I feel really badly because the yarn company sent me quite a bit of this. And so now I'm thinking I will do it in either this stitch pattern or the Berkshire's pattern, which I call slow stitch, SLOUGH, this stitch pattern. And I have either that color or that color. I have some of this, not as much. And then I also have this. So, I may end up going to this, which is using a neutral background. And yeah, I think I might do that. So this is Cormo fingering from a company, Elemental Apex, that my friend Jean had for years. And so each skein has 550 yards, and I've got some leftovers floating around as well. So I love to do that. I love to use up my yarn because I think all good yarn deserves to be reused or used until it's done up. So those are the fruits of me not being so distracted while I'm knitting at night. So we have really wide arms on our couch, so I always put my phone there. And it's such a, now I see somebody on TV with their phone, and I think, oh, I should check my phone. So just kind of teaching myself not to do that. I've gotten quite a bit done. So last week we went to the West Nordic Film Fest. If you don't know anything about the Pacific Northwest, it was a lot of fishing workers and lumber workers came from the Nordic countries in probably the 1800s, and then immigration continued because family bringing over other people. So there's a huge Nordic community, and it's primarily based in a part of Seattle called Ballard. Well, it used to be. They actually called it Oleyville, but now it's like, I don't know what they are. Millennials are living there. But we are members of the Nordic Museum, and they put on this great film festival. So it was films from Iceland, the Faroe Islands, Greenland, Sapmi, which is the Sami territory, and so just those countries. Really good films. We saw 4 full-length films and 6 10 to 12 minute shorts. Really good. It was so worthwhile. We always watch the same museum puts on the Sami Film Festival, which is films from Sami land, and that's always super interesting because it's not an ethnic group that we really know a lot about. If you're old like me, you may have heard of them as Laplanders. That's what they were called when I was being taught. And again, it was an excellent diversion from being in computer purgatory. So one of the things I needed to finish the pattern for Berkshire's was a yarn remainder finder, which is something I've always had on my website. And I love making little calculators to figure things out. So it's fairly simple. There are 8 questions, and then it does a calculation and tells you, like for this, I could put this on my scale and find out how much of a skein I have left. And then based on the yardage and the weight of a full skein of this yarn, I can tell myself, I will find out how much yardage there is. I work in yards, not meters, but I work in grams, not ounces. So I use it a lot because, like I said, I like to use up yarn. And so some of the other colors I have here, I've weighed them, and now I can figure out how much yarn they have. So this used to be a calculator that you could just go type in your numbers. But the way I put those on my website broke, and they were causing me a problem with something else. So I decided not to buy their upgrade and to put my calculators into the pattern tailor. And if you were with me 2 weeks ago, you heard me talk about how Jamie had done the pattern tailor for the entire time I was developing it, and that I didn't really know how to do it. And like I said earlier, there's this thing called JSON, language that you have to use, and don't know that, although I'm learning. And so this has all been kind of an adventure of a 70-year-old learning how to do something that I came up with, but that is done in language that I'm not used to using. And so Jamie was very logical, and so logic functions in Excel she was really good at them. So I'm not logical, and I have a really hard time with them, although I have done them so much, trying to troubleshoot my problems, that I'm feeling much more confident about them. And so this is what you get when you put your numbers in. You can get either a digital copy of you actually get both. You get a digital copy and you get a PDF that you can print. So this is a really crappy copy because my printer and PDF are not speaking right now, so I had to send it as an image. But you can do it in either meters or yards, or grams or ounces and meters and yards, and whatever the last combination is. So you tell it which one you want to use, and it will give you the information in that format. So I have to do this little thing where it's a logic thing. If you selected meters, then your answer comes out in meters. And if you selected yards, then the answer comes out in yards. So it's really straightforward. I'll probably do a couple of so this whole computer thing started. I go out to Mitch and I say, I'm going to close my door. I'm going to do some videos. And he always says, what do you do? And I said, I need to make some videos on how you use the pattern tailor. And I've done all the videos on the knitting part, but I've kind of put this off so that I could show the user the pattern tailor. And as I slide into my seat and open up the program that I use to screen record things on my computer, it's not there. It's there and I can't open it. And then I go to use my layout software and I can't open that either. And so I'm like panicking. And it turns out that something just, as the computer people say, fell over, and I couldn't download anything from the internet. I could download documents, but I couldn't download any programs. The whole system had to be erased and reinstalled. And fortunately, I have multiple backups. And so we were able to copy everything back. I've got all of my documents are in Dropbox, and Dropbox is constantly backing up. I've got a hard drive backup, which also broke at the same time. So couldn't get a backup from there. So we had to get a new drive, transfer a file. That took like 2 days to figure out how to do that because the backup files were so huge. And anyhow, I can't remember where I was going with this. The kind of stuff that I do is not really great for interruptions. And I've always had I love my phone as a camera. And that's really all I love it for. I like being able to access stuff. And I've done a lot of Excel research on it when I'm not at my computer. I like it for research. I do love researching things on the internet, but I'm not a big fan. So not using social media has been great. I just put my phone down. Sometimes I don't even have it in my office, although there's always like, you have to do a two-factor, whatever they call it, verification. So you got to get that code from your phone. So I usually keep it pretty close by, but I kind of hide it so I don't see it during the day and I'm not tempted to use it. I really highly recommend it. And I know that you can put blocks on your phone so that you can't use things. But here's something that is interesting. If your attention gets broken when you're doing something, it takes 15 minutes to get it back. So I don't have that kind of time. And I love this time of day. My hummingbird, I call him my hummingbird, is like stocking up for the night. So he keeps flying over here. He's very demanding. If I let the feeder get too low, he comes in front of the window and like in panic mode. So I always enjoy standing over here at the end of the day. So try having fewer distractions. So, like at night when I'm knitting, it's my leisure time. It's not like I have to be super productive. But if I'm knitting, like I said, I put that thing, the little coral thing, on the wrong end of my scarf. Well, that was probably because I wasn't paying attention. But it could have been because I picked up my phone. And when I went back, I forgot where I was, what I was doing. I also might have been drinking. That happens on Friday nights. So things like, usually I put my knitting aside after a few rows. So every time you get interrupted, you're losing like 15 minutes of time that you could be using. Now it's different if you say like, I can't concentrate on this anymore and I need to get up and do something. Then when you come back to your task, you're refreshed. And that was kind of the purpose of our going to the movies, was to refresh. We're going to the movies again tomorrow. We used to go to a lot of live theater and haven't really loved what they're doing lately. So movies it is. When Mitch and I first started dating, oh my God, in 1982, we went to the Seattle Film Festival. That was probably 83. And they play like hundreds of things. And we both worked, so we were often going to things at night. We used to set our alarm. We'd go to bed and then set our alarm for the later movies. Don't do that anymore. Oh, here's a fun thing. So this is called Viewpoint Color Magazine. And, if you work for a design company, they have access to all sorts of trend reporting and that sort of thing. But I don't, and I can't afford that sort of thing. They cost thousands of dollars. So this is much more color-oriented than design-oriented. And so this is one of their color stories. There's usually 4 or 5 in here. So here's kind of this is called Exploring, and those are pretty colors. Ooh, maybe there's 6. So there's like different color stories. So this one is Your Brights, and then there's that one. Here's a palette that like I love, but most people don't. Very soft. Here's one that kind of combines some brightness and some softer shades. And then here's another one, more in the pinks and purples. I'm always happy to see purple come into color story because it's a color that's not always available. And then this one, it would be Your Earth Tones. So I kind of like them all. They all have names, which I forgot to tell you. So this one is called Memories. And this magazine, or whatever, this one is called Sensatory. It comes out of Amsterdam, so it's a little bit, but they work with Pantone. Out of Mind and Awakening, and then so this one was Exploring, and this one is called Creating. So this magazine, it has some text, but a lot of it is just like inspirational photos. So for this colorway, these the photo that goes with it. So I just love looking at these. And you can, after the fashion month, Pantone on their website, you can go and see the most popular colors from the designers. So I like what they write because it comes from a non-American. So here's something that's right up my alley. My colors, and it looks like glass, but I think it's actually candy. So they just find these beautiful photos. Here's a fashion spread, and it just gives you ideas. So let me look that over tonight. Anyhow, so you can see what colors were most popular amongst the designers, and then textile companies, so yarn companies, big ones, not hand dyers, although they probably pay some attention, use that to choose what colors they're going to present. And if something is kind of pulled as a color that was really popular in the fashion shows, it will usually be more widely used and available to garment companies and designers at a lower cost because they will dye so much in that color. So just kind of a fun little thing. I still love fashion, even though fashion doesn't love me so much anymore. Oh, I wanted to show you this. I made this. I don't think I've shown anybody this. See if I can get the camera and the model into a good position. So this is actually one hank of yarn. It was 100 grams, and it had all these colors in it, and did this in 3 pieces. So there's the neck band, and then the body of it, and then the bottom band. And so I took it apart, an end that hasn't been worked in, we'll just put that back, to kind of make the most of how the colors played out. I had to be pretty strategic. This is another project that I used down to the last 2 feet of yarn. She's got huge shoulders because I've got her fake arms on her. But I love doing this fringe, which you knit. Let's do this where you can see it. You work your pattern and then you work 5 stitches of garter, and you just do that the whole length, and then you take the garter, you drop the garter stitches down, and you've got this built-in fringe. So the only thing I'm not really totally keen on is that this was what I had at the end, and so it feels a little garish, but I had nothing else to make button loops out of. So these are antique buttons, and just tied them on with yarn so that it kind of mimicked the fringe. So I need to get another yarn to make this because I want to do one that's a little slightly more subtle than that one. But I've been staring at it a while. I know the yarn I want. I just have to get around to asking for it. So it's raining. It's been actually kind of nice today. And Mitch is down watching basketball. We're in March Madness. You may or may not know that. And I'm not that interested. I don't really love college sports. And for basketball, I'll watch the Warriors, which is our team, but not much else. So it's a little something for him to do. He got a little freaked out by the whole computer thing, and he leapt in and then regretted that he had to see the project through to the end. So Lucinda, I think you should go to that workshop next week or whenever it is. We did some of the stuff today, study hall, and she has built this amazing tool for planning. And Kate's really straightforward and very generous, but yeah, I just love her. And she like me she actually likes working in spreadsheets. I do it because it gets me what I want. So I think I'll sign off. I need to go find out from Mitch what he wants for dinner tonight. And I have tons of reading that I've been doing or need to do on Excel formulas. And then because of this planning, I have to set a bunch of goals. And I've set the goals. And now I'm doing the part that I'm really crappy at, which is breaking it down into what I can actually get done. And I tend to get really overwhelmed by that sort of thing. And yeah, so she does provide good structure. But I knew what you meant. What was I saying? Yeah, I get freaked out. But she introduced us to this tool called Goblin Tools. And you can say, need to do this. What are the steps? And they will give you steps So for me, I'm great at editing, and if somebody just kind of gives me a layout, I can figure it out. So I created some stuff for me to go through and edit today. So it's off to the music hour and eventually to my Friday night martini, which I am looking forward to. So thank you for coming. I will see. Oh, next time I will not be here next week. I've got to go to PT. I'm having troubles with my thumbs. And that was the only day that I could get an intake. So I will miss next week and then we'll be back on my usual schedule. And I can't do another time because it just screws my schedule up. And that's what happens when you get old. So thanks. Have a great weekend.